to the Fraudcast, everyone. It is a weekly session that Vito and I host for folks in the fraud and risk space, for us to get together on a regular basis and talk about the things that you guys are dealing with, the challenges that you're facing, what you're dealing with in your queues, and to get some advice on things that you're working on from other very knowledgeable professionals such as yourselves. Believe it or not, we have lots of people in this room who have been with us since pretty much the beginning of the Fraudcast, and we're coming up on our 1-year anniversary of this whole community, which we're super, super excited about. And yeah, it's crazy. When Vito and I started around this time last year, believe it or not, I don't know if everybody knows, but like it was just Vito and I sitting in here, getting to know each other, and nobody else was in the room. And we were waiting around until we got maybe a couple of folks. I'm not sure. I don't think there's any of like the OGs in here, like Renuka and people that, familiar names that you guys have seen around. But yeah, so we're very excited, and we just want to say thank you to everyone who has joined us on this journey and is taking advantage of the space that we're trying to put together for you guys. It's been a delight getting to know every one of you, and hearing and learning. I am not a fraud analyst. I think that's something that you guys probably know about me. I'm just trying to help like facilitate the community and make sure that you guys have what you need to connect with each other and learn. But it's been awesome learning personally from all of you. And so we would like to celebrate that with all of you. We're going to be doing a little gift. We're going to be sending a little gift to all of you guys who cares to receive it. Please do. I'll share my screen really quick. If you have not already, join our Fraudcast Slack community. This is also a space just for Fraudcast folks, where you guys can, post about things that you guys are dealing with in your queues. Obviously make sure you're not sharing any like PII or anything like that, but get advice from folks. And then also just to connect with each other and chat a little bit more outside of the space. Please do join if you haven't already. We see a lot of you guys in there chatting and all that. Big shout out to Ben Lee for giving some really great examples of how this community should be utilized with some specific things that you're seeing in your queue. So yes, please do enter that community. And then I'll be sharing later today and for the next couple of weeks a form. If you guys care to get a little gift from us to say thanks and to celebrate our 1-year anniversary of the Fraudcast with us, please do fill out that form and then something will be coming your way. With that being said, I'm going to hand things over to Vito.
What is up, everybody? Happy Wednesday. So good to see you. I'm so excited to introduce our very special guest today. Before we get into that, just to piggyback on what Jenna said, like it's an absolute blessing to just be out here every Wednesday with you. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. It's been a wild year. It's been a long year, but if there's any fruit to the kind of work that we all do, which is not very it's rewarding. It's certainly rewarding, but it's not very like beer and Skittles, as you might say. It's not very. There's not many happy days. A lot of tough days. This is one of those bright spots. And I just, you take 45 minutes out of your week to hang out, talk, educate me, educate the community. I'm just so very grateful for it. I am your tireless champion, and all I want to do is help you out a little bit. If I can help you out a little bit, if we can get something going for you that makes your day easier just a little bit, we've done our work. And I can guarantee you today, my friends, is one of those days, because I am about to introduce to you one of the sharpest minds in fraud and risk strategy that I've ever had the pleasure of meeting. And shout out Kelly Anderson for making the connection here. Kelly is the kingmaker of kingmakers, right? So Kelly made the connection. I'm just so grateful to introduce you to my friend and your soon-to-be very good friend, fraud fighter extraordinaire, absolute murderer of people who are trying to get one up on the system, and someone who's really going to help sharpen your tool set and make you dangerous going into peak season. The one, the only, Anna Prince Palmer. Anna, how you doing?
Hi, I'm doing very well. I really appreciate that intro. That was fantastic. I think I'm gonna record that and just use it as like my intro for any meeting that I go into now. I'm gonna keep it and I'm gonna just play it, just amp
It,
people up.
If you want me to cut it into an MP3 for voicemail, we can do that too. I got you covered. But you're absolutely worthy of way more than that. Uh, Anna, maybe it wasn't sufficient enough of an intro to you. I'd love to hear how you would introduce yourself as well to this amazing community. We got Matthew, we got Preston here, we got Ben Lee, we got Alkaline Trio's own Jared. We've got so many Shellys in the building. How would you introduce yourself to these great folks?
No, it's awesome. And first of all, I just want to say thanks so much for having me on. And again, plus one kudos to Kelly for bringing me into this forum and being the hype person and somebody who really makes sure that we as a small community, like we have to kind of stick together and get to know each other, which I think is great. So I'm really excited to be here and to meet all of you and to see who you are and get to learn and chat from you. So yeah, I guess I would just say, like, I'm a 15 plus year fraud person. Having started at the ripe old age of 20 years old when I started working for the Florida Attorney General's office when I was in college, studying criminology and criminal justice studies. I originally had intentions to go into federal government. I wanted to work for the FBI as a profiler, which will be relevant later on when we start talking about my passions for understanding criminal behavior and activities and stuff. But I went to school and studied criminal psychology and criminal behavior, worked for the Florida Attorney General's office in the Consumer Protection Financial Economic Crimes Division. And then I took a job with Microsoft 8 years ago to come all the way out here to Seattle and work in the fraud investigations organization, and over time have held a lot of different roles at the company, which has allowed me to really learn a lot of different things from various aspects of the fraud control, fraud fighting life cycle, right? From product to data science to investigations to going to court and testifying against people and all those kinds of things. So having that well-rounded kind of oeuvre of being able to see the different sides of the coin, I think has helped me become a well-rounded fraud fighter, in my opinion.
You're pretty good at strategery, I've heard. Is that
Strategery? I was supposed to say it, but yes, I would say I like strategery.
well, let's talk strategery. We've got some of the great sociological minds on the call with us. I'm looking at you, my friend Ryan McDonald. And you kind of tip this one up, Anna, and I just want to like dunk it in. I think getting into the mind of the people who are defrauding us, or even if they're lowercase d defrauding us, maybe they're trying to like stack promo codes or just find some sort of avenue in to get more for less. I think getting into their mind is like a very important practice. It's something that I've learned a lot from you about. So I'm just wondering, where do you begin with that, and how does that get incorporated into your day-to-day? What would you advise people who are just getting down the path of, thinking less about the specific vectors and more about the person who's behind exploiting them? Where would you advise they begin? And if you could just give us a glimpse into your kind of way of thinking about this stuff, I think we'll all benefit tremendously from that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to be super transparent, kind of outright, and say that, like, you're not going to know everybody's intentions, right? Like, there's no way you're going to be able to know that. You're going to always have an attack that you didn't see coming. You're always going to have something that pops up that it was not able to be figured out. It exploits some loophole you didn't think about. Even if you are the most, well-rounded, aggressive fraud prevention, have your product teams locked in tight where you're getting vetted everything immediately before it ships. Like, even if that's the case, because remember, fraudsters are professionals. I think one of the biggest mistakes that I've seen is a lack of, and I hesitate to use this word, but I think it's apt as a lack of respect for the fraudsters. And I think there's this, coming from law enforcement, I think it's a little bit there as well, but there's this kind of thought of them being not as smart, in a lack of a better word, or not as motivated, right? When in fact, it's the opposite. They're more motivated than you are. Because at the end of the day, you get paid, you go home, right? You have an 8 to 5, 9 to 5 job, you do your job, you go home. Your livelihoods are likely not hinging on your success of being able to defraud somebody or commit some activity. A lot of the times, the folks that defraud, I mean, we can talk about the spectrum of fraud and stuff, but for the most part, these are folks who have no other option, right? In some ways, they need it for some purpose, right? You have folks who need it because they live in a country where they don't have many opportunities, and being able to turn to something like cyber fraud is some way that they can feed their families, right? And so you have a wide range of folks who engage in these activities, and it's not all cut and dry, right? Like sometimes there are people who are kids on Reddit who just find something and they want to do it, or they see the latest TikTok thing to like get gift cards or whatever. But then you also have sophisticated networks of people who are literally like families are depending on them to be able to successfully engage in these really, really high stakes fraud activities. So I think that's the first thing I would just encourage is number one, don't feel bad if you don't detect it all because nobody will ever. And two is don't underestimate your opponent, right? So I would say like my immediate kind of thought is, putting on, if you can, some people have a hard time with it. I think it's a function of the role that we're in sometimes where we don't like to think like bad actors and we don't like to think like fraudsters. We try to think from a product perspective of serving a customer, serving something in purpose and keeping our ROI in a certain area and our KPIs and everything and false positives. But if you can put on the fraud hat and think about what would I like from my product if I was a fraudster? Like if I had no money, how would I get this? Like, how would I get this product that I'm selling if I didn't have any money? What would I do? And go online and just see what people are saying about it, right? Like oftentimes fraudsters love to talk about what they're doing. They are very, very ego driven, especially the ones who engage in it's a human thing, right? To be ego driven and to want validation for what you're doing. And so oftentimes they can't shut up about it, to be honest. Like they're all over the place talking about it. But the ones who are good at what they do, they'll talk about it online. They will make a presence. They will set themselves up. They buy into their own, they buy into their own hype about it. Somebody put in their narcissist. That's exactly right. My thought would be, yes, definitely go online and look and see like what folks are talking about your product or your service or what you just launched. And also just think about how you would get it if you didn't have any money. Like, how would I get this thing? If I really wanted it, but I didn't have money, what would I do? And maybe even try it, spin up an account and go try to get it and see what you can figure out. And that will help a lot. So in the past, that's something I've done when I was learning about new products and new areas that I would start to investigate for the first time was I would do that. I would spin up test accounts and I would go see what I could get away with. And just see like my goal is to not pay for this thing or my goal is to get out of it what I want. How do I do it? And then document all of that. And then if you have a good product team, obviously that they'll be receptive to that input from you.
I really want to underscore that point right there because, I admire what you've done in your career. And I think there's probably 1,000 things that you've done great. And that's got to be one of the big ones where if you're able to document and you're able to kind of put yourself into a user journey flow and then take it back to product, take it back to marketing, take it back to some other part of the business, you become a lot more, I keep using the word dangerous, important, a valuable, trusted, respected member of the group and not just Fox Mulder in the basement who's doing all the weird stuff that nobody knows what's going on. X-Files reference there for y'all. Would you say that cross-threading or at least the ability to like take things out of the capital F fraud world and bring them into the realm of other people, would you say that that's like one of the pillars of your career?
I would say it's a skill that is super helpful, right? It's a skill that I think anybody who wants to have success in threading that needle between fraud and action and mitigating fraud has to figure out how to do, right? Because if you, to your point, like, and I say this with all affection, being somebody who is this way and is in my own very own, a lot of us are like basement dwellers. Like we like to sit in our own little rooms in our caves and we like to be on the computer and doing our jobs and digging into stuff. And, we're weird and it's awesome and we love it. And I'm self-professed little weirdo and it's great. It's how we are. A lot of the times that doesn't translate well to corpo speak and corpo people, right? And people who are marketers and all the marketing folks really care about is how you sell the product. They want to sell. That's all they care about. Or folks who are associated with like customers and false positives, and they don't want to hear anything about blocking. They don't want to hear anything that indicates you might add controls that might add friction or anything like that, right? Or a product launch team who doesn't want to hear that their new shiny thing that they're offering is a black hole for fraud and might cause reputational damage. Like they don't want to hear those things, right? And so the strength that you have as a fraud fighter and as a fraud manager, for program manager, whoever, is the ability to translate and distill the activity that you're seeing or the impact you're observing into language that these folks will understand, right? How can you convince them that actually marketing, you probably do care, because wouldn't it be horrible if suddenly this great new thing that we're developing was on some news program because of some attack that happened to it and caused a bunch of customers to have issues, right? Or, hey, actually, like these customers that you think are coming in are not really good because if you look at what they're doing with the product, is actually bad, right? So trying to find ways to balance the activity of what you're seeing and make it such that into a language that they care about is a really complicated but important, I think, function in order to actually like make it so anybody cares about fraud, right? Like, how do you get them to actually care about it? And I'm sure like a lot of the folks here have experience with that in their own as well. But for me, that's been one of the, I would say, pivotal things that is the hardest part of being in fraud and government in general, is building your case and convincing people about why it's important and why they should take the action you want them to take.
We all know the first rule of politics is always make other people feel like it's their idea and not your. Well, with that being said, this is truly your idea, everybody who's here. So I want to open up the floor to y'all. As Anna just teed up, I'm sure you've been through these kind of experiences. I would love to hear your voice on, maybe things that didn't go so well, maybe things that were like a huge W for you. And you're like, let's freaking go. That was awesome. We have Jared in the chat who says, sometimes I think product teams purposely don't check with fraud teams. Ben chimes in and says, yes, I would love to hear just some of your war stories, wins, losses, and otherwise. And then I'd love to hear Anna's take on what happened. So the floor is yours. I'm going to take a sip out of the old water bottle, my friends. Anna, we don't mistake silence for antipathy here on the Fraudcast. We've just got a lot of almonds that are being activated here, and we have a lot of like chewing on things. I'm just also curious, Ryan, I got to put you on the hot seat. The sociological bent here and getting into the mind of not only fraudsters, but getting into the mind of the rest of your company, right? And about like cross-translating these things. Like, what's your take on that? Like, what has worked for you? Because you're a great communicator. I respect you for many things, but especially for your communication. What's sticking out to you by some of the stuff that Anna just dropped down?
I mean, I'll kind of go back to what I was saying, like understanding the why behind things, I just feel like is so important, like especially in a world where people just kind of do without understanding, a lot of blissful ignorance floating through the air along with text messages and data exchange. And so I just feel like sometimes stopping, taking a breath, understanding the action before you take action is interesting. But also, why are you receiving that sort of feedback? Why are you receiving that sort of information? That intellectual curiosity has taken the back seat to, meeting a quota or attaining a certain value. And so I think just going back to being a human being and understanding that people are opportunists, people make decisions based off emotions. And so tying that into how you communicate and receive information is kind of where I would start, if it were me.
Matthew, we're all family here, man. You don't have to raise your hand. Come on, jump in, bro. Jump in.
And Anna, this is for you. Just curiosity. So in a retail environment, there is a constant flow of turnover with leadership. Okay. And so one of the challenges that I have found over the years is that as you have turnover at the leadership role, the fraud philosophy and mindset changes. So I've had leaders who only cared about the dollars. They just wanted more and more and more sales. They didn't care if those sales were good or bad. They just wanted sales. Then I've had others who would throw a hand grenade at a lily where they wanted all fraud stopped. You know what I mean? And so, and I've had a lot in between. Well, the reason I'm bringing this up is when you talk about selling the fraud area, when you talk about convincing others to buy into things that you're trying to accomplish, in your role, are you part of the hiring process when it comes to the leaders that are being hired? Or if not you, people in your space, in the fraud space, are they part of that interview process for these higher leaders that are coming in? And the reason I bring it up is the fraud philosophy, I think, is so important with the business. And if I'm looking at something one way, but all the leaders want it a different way, there is a chasm, there's friction. And one of us is not going to win, and usually it's the bottom feeder is not going to win on that one, kind of thing. So I'm just curious. I just wanted to get your feedback on that piece.
Yeah, no, that's a really great question and a great observation, right? And I think that a lot of us, and myself included, have been at the mercy of leadership, and I don't mean that in like a way of like any specific leaders, but who just maybe don't care, don't understand, right? They don't understand fraud. It's not what they care about. They're focused on something different. And to your point, the high turnover means that you're always starting from scratch, right? And so having to build a new fraud framework every time there's a new leadership change and they come in and they have new ideas, it's exhausting. And honestly, it sets you back, right? Because controls that you might have put in place one time are no longer important, or you can't do them now because they're considered too friction, or all of a sudden you're like pressured to put even more in place when you don't have resources to do it or something like that. So totally understand. I would say I've never been and this could be a function of just where I'm at, which is Microsoft. So remember, it's a very big place, right? And so there's a gap between me and the folks that make a lot more than me and make a lot more decisions than I do. I had never really been included in the hiring process for our leadership that would be making those decisions. However, that being said, I am a very strong believer in, I think, one of these fancy terms that they use called leading upwards or managing upwards, right? And I would say for me, one of the things that has been very successful in my whole career, starting out from a 20-something-year-old, in government and in the AG's office, was not being shy and making sure that you share your thoughts. And so even if you are not included in the decision-making of the leaders, you can still bring the influence, because oftentimes I think we assume that there's knowledge because we see it all the time and we're dealing with it. We assume that like our leaders have to know. They have to know that this is a problem. They have to know that this is going on. They might not know. They might not really truly understand the impact that we're seeing and why it's a problem. So I've never been included in leadership in hirings. I think that's great if you can. Like if you're in that kind of environment where they let you, you should push forward and be a part of it and make sure that whoever's coming in has that sort of framework or understanding. But even if you're not, I do think there's opportunity to still try to surface issues as much as possible and influence where you can.
Thank you, Anna. I appreciate that.
Don't be shy is such a great operative term and like a great mantra for this group. You know where I'm going with this one. Move away from the phrase acceptable risk, says the dean of the Susie School of Communications. Shelley, I'm wondering, about that, moving away from the phrase acceptable risk, and also what you've done in your career about not being shy. Where's the tie-in? Would love to just get your 2 cents on this.
Well, I figured the Susie School of Communication was coming up in this one. I figured it was right there. So I've never been shy a day in my life. Unfortunate situation I have, but I mean, I'm the squeaky wheel all the time. It's a problem. If you don't see it's a problem from somebody's perspective. So get the buy-in of the people it's the problem for. So I literally just was late to this call because I was getting off of a call where they weren't going after something because they didn't put a layer in a control. They left a gap open and we're not bleeding money because that's not the right thing. It's a small trickle in the grand scheme of things. I said, but why is it okay? They said, oh, it's within the calculated acceptable risks. I was like, no risk is acceptable. You're letting it flow out the door. You've left the door wide open. The safe's unlocked. The money's there. There's a sign that says, come pick me up. I'm free. And you left the door wide open. That's not how you deal with risks. That's unacceptable risk. An acceptable risk is you put every safeguard in place and we found a small little loophole. Okay, we can deal with that. We calculated that in. So my thing is I turn around and say, okay, somebody else has to care. Who else is this impacting? Obviously, these people who did the calculations don't seem to care. It's not their money in the safe, so who cares? So I turn around and say, okay, who else is this negatively impacting? And go to them to help jump on my bandwagon that says this is causing a negative end stat, for instance, and the scores are coming in bad for the member services team. Okay, great. Well, that's real bad. That's real bad. How can we fix this? Perfect. Now I've got somebody else's buy-in. And so bringing those in and letting them know that just because you've calculated a level of risk doesn't mean it's acceptable.
Anna, what do you think about that?
I love it. I totally 100% agree. Absolutely. Everything Shelley said is on point. Like, I think I really feel like this concept of acceptable risk is, it's not acceptable, right? Like if you were to frame it in another metaphor of any other kind, it would be ridiculous, right? It would be like, oh, we're like car crashes or something, right? Like from a car perspective, like take a car company, for example, at what level is it an acceptable risk that your car is going to cause a car crash before you do a recall or you do something, right? There's rules and standards associated with it. Like turn it into any other scenario and it sounds ridiculous to say there's acceptable risk associated with it just because you're dealing with a product or something or fraud in a service or transaction level. It's not. And to Shelley's point, if you have a trickle, it will turn into a flood because the bad actors, they look for those little trickles. They look for these things where they can squirrel in somewhere that's getting away with it and not getting caught. And they literally spend time going in and finding these things and telling each other about them and testing stuff out to see what will work because they know if they can get away with it, if you're not stopping it at this small level, if they attack you all at once, you're not going to be able to stop it and you're going to be overwhelmed. So being able to have a really robust defensive posture and a zero tolerance policy or a really, really high threshold no tolerance policy is so important. Absolutely.
Speaking of defensive posturing, I'm glad this got brought up because I wanted to talk with you about honeypotting a little bit here because we have a great question that just came in from Jared. And Jared, feel free to jump in on this. Jared asks, what are your thoughts when engineers purposely want to leave the safe open to see what bad actors are doing? Anna, have you ever dealt with anything like that?
I have mixed feelings. I have indeed, and I have mixed feelings about it. And so I think I think from one perspective, I think it's a great idea. If you do it right and you have really good controls around it and you're doing it very safe in a sandbox and no connection to your environment, because you can learn a lot of really valuable, useful information from honeypots, for sure. You can see what people are doing. I also feel like there's a bit of a, how do I phrase this the right way? What's the motivation of somebody going after the honeypot versus another product? Like, are you going to learn enough from what people are doing with the honeypots that will then translate over into protections that you'll put into the other products that you have? Because that's the whole point of a honeypot, right? Is to see like, what can we learn from this? How can we apply that to our actual work or other products, right? Most of the time, at least in my experience, you're not going to expose your really super valuable customer facing things that make your money endpoints or services to bad actors because they're going to get defrauded and that's going to cause lots of problems. So making sure that whatever you're exposing or testing or assuming you're going to get from the honeypot, make sure that it actually will give you the value and will intel you want, you can use it. And the second thing is also making sure that like, what's the environment you're putting it up there? Like, how are you putting it up in the world? Are you just leaving it open and hoping they stumble upon it? Are you trying to like see if it's being targeted on some platform somewhere? So I think all of that is, in my experience, that was the biggest challenge with honeypots, was kind of like seeding it and hoping that somebody bites. It's like going fishing and hoping that somebody bites, right? And then when they do bite, it's like, great, we can learn a lot from it, assuming you don't have privacy things around like figuring out the services and stuff that people are using and looking into it. But then threading that needle between what they're doing from it versus what you can learn to protect with it has been challenging, in my opinion. This could be because I was never on an engineering function. Of all of the many roles I've held, engineer has not been one of them. So like if you're an engineering team and it's focused on just like seeing endpoints that are active and seeing what folks would do it with the sole purpose of patching them, that might be a different story. But like from a fraud perspective of like, hey, let's put this service out here and see like what people call it and do with it and how that might translate into fraud. I've had mixed results with it, honestly.
Jared, I got to get you off mute here real quick. What do you think
I'd love
about
to hear the specific scenario that
Yes.
you're talking about, Jared? Yeah.
Give us more, Jared.
Yeah. So the specific scenario, like an e-commerce platform where sellers can sign up to sell items. Once like someone becomes approved to be a seller, other users can tip that user. So they don't have to sell anything. There's just the ability to start tipping them. So the fraudsters realized that, made accounts that were not seller accounts, used their stolen credit cards or payment methods to tip this one seller that wasn't selling anything. They realized that, they made a bunch of accounts and rinse and repeat. And then like speaking to engineering teams, they're like, yeah, sometimes we want to leave these open to see what they're doing, but like very user facing, like everyone can see it.
Gotcha. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the minute you described the ability to tip, I was like, okay, that's a problem. We all know that doesn't sound like a good idea. That's right up there with self-service refund, in my opinion, of the dumb stuff that we do sometimes that is a fraudster's dream. Absolutely. And that's like collusion, that's like collusion right away, right? Like, I mean, the only victim there is you and the card holders, because the actors, they're getting, it's not hard for them. So yeah, in that case, like the endpoint. So it sounds like in that case, it's almost like a self-caused issue, going back to my point about what are you like, don't tie it to your actual systems, right? Like what were they hoping to get out of leaving that open? What was the goal of allowing that to stay open? Did they solve any problems with learning that activity was coming in?
Yeah, to my knowledge, that feature is still there. I don't actually know what they were looking for. I think it was supposed, I mean, I almost think it was an accident. They just like thought, oh, like people like tipping their live streamers. But they can send tips even when the live stream wasn't active. But when the live stream was active, the fraudster would just have other accounts go into their live stream, tip them, and this was like very user facing, because like anyone can see who's tipping the seller. So people will start saying, "Whoa, this seller's making like hundreds of tips within like minutes." Other people will realize, "Wait, I think I know what's going on. I'm going to do that to myself too."
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a rinse and repeat.
Yeah, that like reminds me of when, I can't remember it, I probably won't name drop anyway, but a long time ago, there was this streaming platform for gaming that did something similar, where they were trying to allow I don't think they actually went through with it, because we were very, I mean, I remember being very like don't allow people to tip on things like that with especially if there's no vetting. I think the vetting thing was really important, which sounds like it might be missing, is like, if you're going to allow somebody to accept money from other people on your platform or to be paid out, you should validate and vet them, make sure that they're vetted and actually like, who they say they are and stuff. And so a lot of these streaming platforms, I think, now use like they use a validated, like sellers have to hit like a certain amount of people watching and streams or followers or something before they're eligible. But then of course you get into people buying followers and all that kind of stuff to get around it, right? See, again, there's always a way around whatever you're going to try to do. Interesting scenario.
Well, let's get back into the realm of strategery real quick from a very good friend of mine, Mr. Colin. Colin writes, I look at this a bit differently. Most fraud teams argue over how much loss is tolerable. I've flipped my focus on how much confidence the system can sustain. When you map coherence across behavior, intent, and design, acceptable risk stops being a guess and becomes a measurable state. Colin, I'm trying to put your words into mine, but you could say it a lot better than I can. Would love to hear what you think about that. And then Anna would love to hear what you think about this. Floor is yours, my friend.
Yeah. I think you know me well enough to know what way I work. So we work very closely for several years. I think what I mean by this is most frameworks start from loss and then work backwards. And where I've kind of flipped my thinking recently in what I'm doing in my current role is I start from system confidence and work down. With that, I kind of map how coherent the behavior is, how stable the intent looks, and how resilient the design is. And I guess with that, when those layers align, you're able to express risk as a measurable confidence level. It doesn't become gut feeling or a tolerance band or however you want to describe it. We've got multiple ways that we kind of put this over internally and externally. And I think it moves the conversation a little bit from how much can we lose to how sure are we that what we're seeing is real. And I think that's where the real shift is. If you just flip the script a little bit, rather than working from behind, kind of get in front.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think what you're talking about is the next evolution of what fraud programs are, which is less reactive and more proactive, right? Like the ability to have really robust detections and anomaly alerting and, a really robust manual reviewer detections team that can identify these emerging issues that come in. And to your point, being able to effectively label them in such a way that you are confident that this is fraud or this is abuse that you're measuring, and then bring that back into the measurable state. Absolutely. That's the mature state that I feel like if you're starting out in a program, you're not going to be there, but you have to get there. That's the end result for sure, to be able to be proactive rather than reactive, right? 100% agree. I think that the challenge that a lot of places have, and I think is investment to get to that state. I think it's hard to get to that state sometimes, depending on leadership investment capability, because it is an infrastructure that needs to be built to support that framework, right? You have to build an ML models of some kind to detect, right? Risk scoring. You need to build the detections team that can label things, manual review possibly. You have to build these anomaly alerting, and who's going to action on those alerts, right? Like who's going to actually do all these things. But absolutely, I 100% agree with you.
I love when my friends come together and my world gets a little bit smaller. It makes me a happy guy. In the few minutes we have left, I want to highlight one person, Hollywood's own Ben Lee. Ben, you had a great point that you brought up, a great little chin scratcher in the Fraudcast side Slack. Would love if you could kind of bring us up to speed. I would love what Anna could possibly recommend in this situation. And by the way, let's get a little jazz finger snapping poetry clapping for Anna today. This has been almonds activated, as we like to say here. So Ben, floor is yours. Would love to hear what you're seeing and what you've got going on. And I can confirm what Ben is seeing is the same thing that I'm seeing across the world. So Ben, please take it away, my man.
Hey everybody. So we have a different type of business on how we look at accounts, and so ours is an MLM business. So people sign up under other people, and so we can see different account types and where the account types are being set up. And so we were noticing usually when people do business, they usually stick to their continent. There are a few overachievers that can sell everywhere, but so usually day-to-day customers, they're going to stay in the same continent. And we were just noticing they were using a European sponsor, signing up retail accounts in New Zealand, but they were all using US Wells Fargo bins. And so they were using just smaller orders. So it definitely looked like it was credit card testing. And so luckily a lot of our old rules catch us a lot of this. We did a lot of velocity type rules where, number of transactions within a certain amount of time, along with looking for combinations of multiple countries and being used at the same time. So that's not very common. So a combination of those rules triggered these without triggering legit customers that might be doing actual business in other countries as well. And so, but the most recent one we also got this is where sometimes I feel like there's probably some new fraudsters to this world, because usually the fraudsters we deal with every single order, the IP address and device IP and everything is different for each transaction. But this one, they had the exact same IP address and exact device for every transaction, and it just threw a big red flag. And so we've seen this in the past before where we do see our products being sold on like Amazon or eBay, and then Asia, they have their own like Taobao and all that stuff. And so we've seen it where eventually some of these customers actually like the product and they buy it directly from us, but all their information has been blocked because their actual shipping address where they bought the product from off of eBay was used on a fraudulent account created on our website previously. But what happened was the fraudster probably got payment from this person on eBay via Cash App or Venmo. And then when this fraudster ordered it from our site, they used a stolen card to actually ship the real product to the customer. So a weird service, but
So it sounds like you have a combination of potentially, so the hypothesis is potentially card testing, but it also sounds like you have like a reseller kind of framework going on as well, right?
yeah.
Like
Mhm.
where they're kind of being the pass through for, they probably set them up potentially as like a shop somewhere that offers your service or or whatever product. I assume it's a physical product that gets shipped out to people, right?
Yeah.
And then they're, like you said, so the customer probably doesn't know that they're not legit and they're buying it and giving the information possibly. And then the actor is just fulfilling it through you. So you mentioned that like you've seen the activity, which is always kind of interesting when they do stuff that you're like, why are you not hiding your IP? Why are you not hiding your device? Why are you like are you lazy? Like, what are you doing? Right. And the answer is probably yes, because they can get away with it. Right. Like if you're letting it go through and they're not having to obfuscate, then yeah, it's working. But it sounds like my immediate kind of thought was going to ask like around the idea of what rate limiting or velocity checks and stuff that you're doing upstream. It sounds like you're doing a lot of that already, kind of just like trying to identify clusters of IPs and devices and adding velocity limits and things like that. But now that I know it's a physical product, I'm wondering about the fulfillment. Like, have you talked to any of these customers that got these products that you're having to block and like seen like backtracked it up to see where they engaged? Like if they bought it from you or they want to buy it from you, where are they getting engaged with you? So back in the day, there was a device exchange thing. I can talk about this one because the guy's in jail now, but there was a device exchange fraud scheme. And the way that we were able to backtrack to him and figure out what was happening was a very similar scenario, was because we contacted the customers to find out like, hey, where did you get this device? Like they were calling us and saying, I'm having an issue with this. I'm like, well, you didn't get it from us, but you got it from this fraud network. And they pointed us to an eBay store where they were getting the product from. And so that's how we were able to say, oh, okay, that's where this is coming from. That's the nexus, right? And then using that to be able to backtrack to this person and figure out the network. So especially if you're using physical goods, the good news is there's an actual tangible thing, right? Like there's shipping records, there's signatures, hopefully, there's all sorts of like evidence that somebody has to do. Yeah. So I would try that if you haven't already, is like find out where these customers are, unless if they're not buying directly from you, which is sounded like they're not, like figure out where they're actually getting the product from, like where are they finding this in the first place? Who's selling it to them? Because if it's not you, somebody is. It's the fraudster for sure.
Yeah, when they've done business with us again, because they're like, "Oh, I really want the
Yeah,
product," and
they
they're
liked
like,
it,
"Oh,
right? And they want to come back and get it from you again because they
yeah,
liked it, right?
yeah," because their original source is no longer there,
Right.
and so they're like, "Oh, well, did you buy it from Amazon or eBay?" Like, "Oh, I did buy it from eBay." And we're like, "Okay, this is potentially what happened. I'll go back in, or someone on my team will go back in, we'll unflag everything so that they can actually order from us again."
Yeah.
And so
Are
we've
you
tried different things where like we even put like hidden QR codes that only we knew where we put it on the product just to see where they went. And sometimes these fraudsters or these product resellers, somehow they found out where these were. And we've seen on some of these other third party sites where there's like, oh, when you buy the product, there will be some pieces cut out of the box, or like, wow. And so they're telling the customers like, hey, the box is not complete, but the product is fine. And
right?
so they're getting very sophisticated.
Is their product, are they offering it for less than what you sell it from directly on your website? Are they selling it at a discount?
Yes.
Okay, there you go. I'm curious if you have any, and this, I know this can be challenging to do because some places like are more receptive than others, but like, do you have any communication with eBay and like having them help you with doing takedowns and stuff like that? Or are these more like, are you seeing, you mentioned that like the seller's no longer there. Is it because they organically fell off the map and like went somewhere else? Or like, are you actively working with eBay to get them taken down?
So we're working with a company that takes care of everything on Amazon for us. And so they're allowed to resell our products. But because they're allowed to do that, they have the right to kick everybody else off. And so, but eBay, we aren't able to do that. So for now, all we can do to address with eBay is if these sellers are using copyrighted images or using trademarks and things like that to try to take down their listings. And so that's the only thing we can try to bug these sellers to, because they'll get these notices like, hey, they're getting in the way of our business. And so they'll get a notification that they need to take these postings down. But, they take it down, they just create another account ID and just do another posting. And so it's just an ongoing battle with other resellers that we can't work directly to have, any contracts with.
Yeah, I saw Vito was going to share his screen. I guess so in the case of the one that the few of those situations that I've dealt with in the past, we were able to successfully disrupt through a couple ways. The first one was shutting down. I mean, so a couple things. There's lots of ways to go about this, but like some of them are more palatable than others for companies, right? So like one of them being don't honor this, don't honor anything. It's different. It's more different for you because it's a physical good. So once they have it, you can't like go to their house and take it from them, right? Like you can't show up and say, you didn't actually pay for this from us, I'm taking it from you. You can't do that. But if it's a digital service, like rejecting the entitlement for it and saying you didn't buy it from us legitimately, that's an option, right? And that encourages them to buy from you directly. The other one is working with law enforcement and working with the reseller sites themselves to actually like target those and get them taken down, because ultimately, like you really just have to disrupt the fraudster enough that it becomes a burden for them to try to continue doing it, right? Like it's just making it annoying enough for them that they give up and go somewhere else. Like it's really the goal of what we're trying to do. So if they put up a sales thread and they get shut down right away and nobody buying from them, like they'll get annoyed and go somewhere else or target a different product. In your case, what I might recommend, and we can chat maybe offline on LinkedIn or something, I'm super curious what chatter there is on like the web or dark web about whatever service this is, because there's whole playbooks literally written about how to do reseller fraud and refunding abuse fraud and stuff. And there's like literally like whole Telegram community threads where they talk about these techniques and find out the ones that are easy to hit. So yeah, maybe we can chat. And I'm super curious to see what we can figure out.
Pretty cool.
Again, I love when my friends become friends. It just makes me happy. I'm a happy boy. Now, I'm just so grateful for all of you for sticking out a little bit longer here. This has been an amazing chat. Anna, I cannot thank you enough for coming out here and getting everyone pumped up in these final moments that have already passed. But I'm going to ask you what I always ask, Anna. What are your words of inspiration and wisdom and peace and love for everyone as we go into this wild time here at the end of the year where everything's going to get a little bit hairier, a little bit hotter and all that kind of stuff? What would be your parting words for this group of look at these, look at the faces you see here. Everyone is ready to pounce. Put me in, coach. Let's go. What would be your words for this crew?
Absolutely. We're all getting ready to go into high strung season, right? Where we're all going to be like hunched over our laptops and watching things and seeing how stuff goes. I think the biggest thing is, this is something a manager of mine taught me a long time ago, was it's not life or death. So don't like, just from a purely mental health perspective, right? You're not dealing with like, you're not surgeons at the hospital. It's stuff's going to happen. I don't know if I can cuss on here, so I won't, but like, you know, things are going to happen. Things are going to happen. And you're not going to catch everything. And that's okay. Live to fight another day. Don't burn yourself out. I think that's one of the biggest things. Don't burn yourself out. That would be one of my words of wisdom. My other words of wisdom would be to you: do not let a good fraud fire go to waste. That is something that I have learned a lot in my career. Is sometimes these things that happen that cause lots of pain can be really good opportunities for traction, right? If you have a huge attack that happens and there's a lot of activity and your leadership is pissed off enough about it, use that as momentum to get change and use it as opportunity to explain what's needed to fix the issue, and what you would recommend. Like oftentimes that's the only way to get sometimes these folks engaged, is if they're having to be engaged because there's a big attack of some kind, right? Yeah, those are my 2 pieces of, of advice.
I love that. That's straight out of the Susie School of Communications. Don't let a fraud fire go to waste. So on that note, I just thank you all for coming out. It's so great to see you, Colin. Thanks for coming all the way from across the ocean. And for every single one of you, I look forward to seeing you again. Please contact, I know your DM's about to get blown up. Please contact Anna on LinkedIn if you got any questions. Love to see y'all in the side Slack. Until next time, my friends, have a blessed one. Have an awesome one. You're going to crush it in the coming weeks, and we'll be seeing you soon. We'll see you next week. Have a great one, y'all.